So we have the tag helpers available. Now let's use them in the index view. So we want a link to a details page for each country on the page. So in the loop, as we display every country, next to each country, we can add that link, and we use the tag helper for that. So after we display the name, we'll start the link with A. And here we can specify the tags, such as the controller and action, that will process this link. Because we want to go to country detail page, we will of course have that action in the country's controller. And of course, all this would have to be planned ahead of the time, otherwise you'd have to come back and make changes if you, for example, wanted to have an action in a different controller. But in our case, I know that we will have this action in the country's controller. So the tag will be ASP dash, and here you can see the action and area, and one of them is controller, and that's the one what we want. So the controller, of course, like I said, will be countries. And now we need to add a tag to the action on that controller that we want to go to. And the action that we will create in the future, of course, will be called getCountryById. This will be a standard for our detail pages of all objects. For example, author details will be using action getAuthorById, category detail page will be getCategoryById, and so on. And again, this is something you want to plan ahead. With a simple plan, you can put these things into your view before you even have the controllers and actions, rather than coming back to each view as you add actions to the controllers. So let's add the action tag. So it's gonna be ASP dash and action. And like I said, it will be get country by ID. If you are planning on naming it something else, then make sure you spell your action here. And finally, ASP.NET Core also lets us pass a simple parameter into the link. Mostly, we will use it to pass in IDs. We can pass in multiple parameters. The only rule is that the name of the parameter must match the parameter in your action. And again, with a little planning, this is easy to code in advance. In our case, any ID will have the name of the class in it. So for example, ID for the country class will be called country ID. ID for category will be category ID, and so on. So to pass this argument, we use ASP-route. ASP- and here is the route. But we want to specify the name of the route here, so I will do another dash. And you can see this adds the data, and the data I want in this case is the country ID. So like I said, this will be the parameter in the action. It's gonna be called country ID. And we pass the actual ID, and we have access to it. We are still inside the loop, so we have access to the item. So add item dot, and we can choose the ID. We have the name and ID. In this case, we are passing the ID. And I can close the anchor tag. And now I will name the link itself, and I'll use the separator. So we will have the country name, then separator, and then the link itself. And the link will be called details. So now we have a link that will lead to a details page. And here we can also add a link to delete the country. We could add any link, even for creating the country, but that would be a little strange to have a link to a view for creating a country on the side of each individual country. User wouldn't expect that. User expects the links to be related to the record next to the link. And in this case, the record is just the name of the country. So instead, we will add a link to creating the country to a main menu a little later. We could also add an update link here, but I won't. Again, I will use the update link inside of the details page itself. So here we will simply go to the details page, and we will be able to delete the country if the user wants. So let's add the delete link, and I'll just copy this, paste it under, and again we want to go to the countries controller, but the Asp action will of course be something else, and all our delete actions will have the delete word in it and the name of the class. So we will have delete country, delete author, delete category, and so forth. And here we'll have the action as delete country. And we will pass the ID of the country that we want to delete, so we'll leave the country ID route as is, and instead of details, we will simply do delete country. That's gonna be the name of our link. And that's it, our view is almost finished. One more thing I want to add is the model state that will display the errors. We already have the view bag here, but like I said before, we can also use model state errors in our view to display messages that come straight from the API. So above the main div, I'm going to display another div, and this one will have a tag helper called Asp Validation Summary. So here we'll display our custom message, and under there I will do the div, and the tag is Asp Validation Summary. And the name is self-explanatory, and you can see we can display all errors, or no errors, or model only, and that's the one we want. This one displays the model level errors only. Now, we won't do a lot of designing for our pages, but still we want to do at least a very basic CSS. And for that, we will use Bootstrap. Now, we don't have it implemented yet, but if you are at least a little bit familiar with Bootstrap, then you already know that errors are typically displayed as red text, which is the class text danger. So I'm going to add that class to the validation summary link now, so I don't have to come back to it later. So it's gonna be class text danger, and I will close the div. And our view is ready, but before we test it, let's just get the Bootstrap working.